Okay. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I want to sincerely thank all of you for attending today's important event. From the outset, let me say that I'm quite ambivalent about today's event. In general, we like our side events to the Human Rights Council to be broadcast live so they can reach the widest possible audience. However, some of the students present, already victims of anti-Semitism, violence, and harassment at their universities, are fearful that they will be further victimized upon their return to campus. This is why one student who is sitting here is solely identified as student, so I ask that nobody takes any photos or videos of this event for further circulation. Dear friends, today's event could not have been more timely. Since October 7, our members and Jewish communities across the globe have been physically and verbally attacked, harassed, isolated, and marginalized. Jewish homes and institutions have been vandalized. Anti-Semitic discourse online has reached record levels. Jewish students on campuses have not been spared, and we'll hear today 3 such testimonies from students in Europe and North America. Let me reiterate that free speech does not include violence, harassment, exclusion, bullying, or hate speech. Universities are meant to be institutions for learning, exchange, and dialogue, not centers for radicalism and hatred. Jewish students may be the first ones to pay a price, but at stake is our democracy, the rule of law, peaceful coexistence, and even modern economies. Imagine what it would mean for a society, in political, economic, or societal terms, if their institutions of higher learning cannot produce leaders that are able to uphold the values of inclusion, dialogue, and respect. Before we listen to the students' testimonies, I would like to give the floor to Daniel Radomski, Head of the World Jewish Congress Strategy and Programs, and Executive Director of the World Jewish Congress Jewish Diplomatic Corps. Daniel?
Thank you, Leon. And my thanks also to the extended WJC Geneva team for putting together this event. Excellencies, dear friends, as a representative of our organization that connects and protects Jewish communities in over 100 countries worldwide, and have been doing so with the seat here in Geneva for over 80 years, it's of course a source of pain to me personally that we are still, and now we're in 2024, we are still discussing the fact that the Jewish minority does not have the opportunity to be safe and to be open in the expressions of their identity. But we will do so. This is our job, this is our task, and we all need your collaboration in order to do this efficiently together. So we are appalled, but not surprised, unfortunately, when we see the developments after the occurrences last year, and that the situation for Jewish students and the Jewish minority is more negative now than we've seen in many, many years. And when we see this metamorphosis of hate in terms of the anatomy of Jew hatred, and as Rabbi Sachs eloquently put it, when we are progressing from a hatred of religion to hatred of people to hatred of state, we are seeing that the Jewish group is being victimized and has been so for the past 3,000 years. Now, our objective as a human rights organization is rather simple. It is that the Jewish students that you have seated around this table should have the opportunity to be proud, to be safe, and to be able to express all elements of their identity, which as is the rights of any minority in any nation. Instead, we are seeing a triangle of challenges in front of us, starting with, on one leg of the triangle, dehumanization. As a grandchild of Holocaust survivors myself, the fact that we see the narratives in terms of Jews being regarded as less than human, and that being a slippery slope towards hatred, towards violence, is something that I did not think that I would experience in my lifetime, but unfortunately, this is a challenge, and we'll hear the students' voices. The second part is erasure of our connection, both as an indigenous people connected to the Middle East, but that we will not have the opportunity to express every aspect of our identity freely. And secondly, the base of that triangle is the absence of a nuanced and a clear-minded debate where we have the ability to hold several different priorities in mind at the same time, which is of course also fueled by social media. And it's something that, again, we as an organization seek to have exactly that type of dialogue, which is why today's event organized by my colleagues here is so important. Now, when it comes to younger leaders, let me end with a little bit of good news, because we are in the sea of darkness here. They are, of course, the ones facing the brunt of these type of challenges. However, and you will see it clearly from this session, they are also incredibly courageous. They are also the tip of the sword when it comes to the response. And as Jewish professionals, we can only admire their dedication towards this target. And the World Jewish Congress does everything in our might to really make not just a seat at this table, but to rebuild what we call a family table, where all elements of Jewish society have an opportunity to speak out and to act in order to solve our problems. But in order to do so efficiently, we need your collaboration. So listen to their voices, listen to their recommendations, and we look forward to the continuation of a productive collaboration. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, the first student I would like to give the floor. She comes from a prestigious university, France, but chose to remain anonymous due to the bullying she has experienced at her school, and we want to hear your experiences.
Thank you for listening to me today. I am a student of one of the best schools in the world for public and international relations. This testimony is a compilation of the worst moments I have lived on campus. It is unfortunately non-exhaustive, and I just want to point out that the anti-Semitism I suffered from did not start on October 7th, but way before that. At first, I was quite surprised at the number of prejudices extremely well-educated students had about Jewish people. For example, friends of mine repeatedly said that their parents couldn't have a proper career in finance or business because Jews owned it, despite their parents being much more successful in their careers than mine, and their family being way richer. People were also surprised when I told them that not every Jewish person was rich. In November 2022, during my first year, someone saw my David Star necklace and asked if I was Jewish. I said yes, and he answered, "Don't say that to him," pointing a student, "otherwise he will murder you." I discovered how hostile people were to Israel and Israelis by the jokes they told and their global attitude towards anything related to Israel, including its essence as a Jewish state. Throughout the year, the jokes intensified and became real attacks towards people. During a Model United Nations simulation, a friend of mine who was not Jewish nor Israeli represented the delegation of Israel. He told me that some people spat on him and kicked him out of the group for the only reason that he represented Israel. During a party in April 2023, a student came to me and called me the colonizer. A few minutes later, he grabbed me by my neck, strangled me, and told me, "Here we are going to do to you what we do to them in Gaza." At least 10 people saw the scene, and everyone laughed it off as a joke. Later during the year, I was working to create an association with two friends. I was the only candidate to take the presidency for the coming year, and I had worked months for it. When the executive board gathered, one member refused my elections as president because, and I quote, "of the Jewish factor," which made it impossible to trust me according to them. When I asked for explanations, I was told that she was convinced that students were sent and paid by the Israeli government to spy on them. Going back to school in September 2023, the jokes about Jewish people intensified, I think because I grew closer to some people who therefore felt more comfortable joking about my Jewishness. Here is a list of a few things that struck me. Again, it is non-exhaustive. In a class about digital policies, we were talking about potential bias of information found in the medias. A student leaned over to me and said, "Yeah, well, media bias, we all know who that is," referring to the Jews. He kept on with these kind of remarks all throughout the semester. At a party later, one of my best friends tried to discredit me with someone and therefore referred to me as the Jew girl and not my name, attributing to me the fact that Jews are arrogant and liars and that I could not be trusted. No one was shocked by her saying. There was a lot of jokes made about the Holocaust as well. Someone I knew said to me, "You, with your name and your origins, you win a direct train ticket to Poland." During a second-hand clothing sale organized at my university, I tried on dress and shoes. A student said to me, "Oh, you're going to a bar mitzvah?" I laughed a little, and he followed up by saying, "Your vintage shoes are cute. They remind me of the time when someone would have taken your shoes off to gas you." I was told in February that the same student wished I had taken missiles to my head and died under rockets in Israel. After 7th of October, things got worse onwards. On October 10th, a discussion broke on the WhatsApp group about current events in the Middle East, justifying and praising massacres which occurred on October 7th, and celebrated the, and I quote, violent pogroms against Jewish people. Another student wrote, Jewish lives are cheap, ask Rothschild. In November 2023, 3 members of the French Jewish Union and I organized a leaflet distribution campaign to raise awareness about the sexual violence that occurred on women during the attacks of October 7th and the silence of feminist associations in the face of this sexual violence. The Feminist Association of my university accused us of defamation. They told us they would complain to the administration, which they did. They asked us if we didn't have anything better to do because October 7th was the detail. Then we asked them why the association had refused to sign our inter-associative statement against the hateful importation of the conflict and the rise of anti-Semitism on campus. The president of the association replied that taking a stand against anti-Semitism is too political. We suggested a joint project on the theme of sexual violence against women, but the association refused and never talked about the 7th of October again. In February 2024, I was told that a friend of mine had said that the only reason I got an internship was because I was Jewish. When I confronted him, he told me that it was not only his opinion, but many people speculated on my case and advised me to be careful to who I talk to. On March 12th, the Palestine Committee Association organized an unauthorized conference entitled Jewishness and Anti-Zionism. I wanted to go and to see what was going to be said, but when I tried to enter, 2 activists refused me access to the amphitheater on the pretext of security measures. When I asked why, they replied, "We've got nothing to say to you. This is just the way it is. We are not letting you in. I don't have to justify myself." And someone added, "We know you." 3 students then testified having heard in front of the doors, "Don't let her in, she's a Zionist." Then 2 activists from the Palestine Committee Association came up to me and shouted, "You are not coming in. It's because of you that we are suffering racism." She pointed me and shouted, "I recognize you, you are harassing me. You took photos of me and you put them in the medias." Apparently, she had filed a complaint against me, which I had never heard about from anyone nor any institution. I had never spoken to this student before, nor taken any photos of her, nor broadcasted any photos of her or any other students in the medias. With the support of the administration, I was finally able to enter the amphitheater, but inside, Jewish students were subjected to further intimidation and finger-pointed. An organizer declared over the microphone that for security reasons, I will ask you to wear a mask because Jewish Union members are in the room. They take photos of us, intimidate us, and put us in the medias. I ended up on CNews and Twitter because of these people. Her declaration was untrue. None of the Jewish Union members have never broadcasted any photos of any students in the medias. People then turned to us and applauded the warning. We left quickly because the atmosphere was too oppressive and a member of the administration feared a physical attack. One Jewish student then told the Jewish Union that he was asked for his name, which sounded very Jewish, and the Palestine Committee told him that he could stay as long as he said, "Long live Palestine." A few hours later, the WhatsApp group of 526 people is the scene of a wave of messages attacking me and the Zionist students, as well as justifying our discrimination. When we talked about what happened, someone declared that in the view of the situation, the least you can do is to keep a low profile, the "you" being indefinite. The student then clarified her point by saying, "You Zionists." Many legitimized what happened under the pretext of security, saying that after a while, we'll all know each other's political positions, so you've got to stop pretending. During this conversation on the WhatsApp group, I was the victim of defamation as well as the entire Jewish Union. A student circulated false information claiming that Zionist militants shout every time there's a minute of silence for Gazans. It's understandable that they are not welcome at any meetings for Palestine, thus aiming to exclude me from the conference. He later came to me and admitted to me that he knew I had never done that, but he needed to illustrate his point. He never publicly retracted his remark, even though he had contributed to the cyberbullying I suffered from then. When I started to talk about anti-Semitism during this event, people replied, "You are not going to die because you felt bad as a Zionist for 5 minutes." Another student spoke about the instrumentalization of the term anti-Semitism, delegitimizing what I had experienced. I was booed in an entire assembly when I talked about anti-Semitism. Since March 12th, the climate in my university kept getting worse. People refused to sit to me in class. They started rumors about me helping the pretend military effort of genocide. People I thought who were my friends stopped talking to me. They broadcasted photos of me. They refused to be seen with me in public. I have been deleted from student discussion groups on Instagrams on vague grounds. During class, when the issue of harassment came up, a student I didn't know looked at me and said that some people, meaning me, used the excuse of harassment to be Islamophobic. His tone was so aggressive I had to leave the classroom. I was directly picked on during classes, with people telling me "Free Gaza" anytime they could and calling me a bully for denouncing anti-Semitism. The situation became unbearable and the malaise among Jewish students reached an alarming level. For several months, our school had been the scene of militancy that has no regard for any framework, rules, respect, or tolerance, which did not allow us to study peacefully. A feeling of impunity had developed within the student community. It is important to keep in mind that between 2022 and 2024, the Jewish Union produced numerous reports and made dozens of appointments with the administration regarding the worsening situation for Jewish students on campus, the rise of anti-Semitism and terrorist glorifying on campus. Nevertheless, we feel that no action has been taken. Jewish students have to go to class with students who have apologized for terrorism, justified the murders of Israelis, and made anti-Semitism comments. The same students publicly asking Zionists to keep a low profile, all without any consequences. I am afraid that in such an elite school, nuance disappeared. Debate was no longer possible, at least not with Zionists, whom it had become tolerable and accepted to ostracize. My Zionist positions have always been those of peace, with two states where Palestinians and Israelis can live in peace, and I have always made that position clear. The distress of Jewish students must be alarming and not swept under the carpet in the belief that anti-Semitism is merely reactionary and circumstantial to geopolitical events in the Middle East. The gravity of the situation for Jewish students must be recognized as a matter of urgency. We lived in hell and the psychological consequences persist to this day. I don't think my situation can get any better, and I have accepted it. Nevertheless, I hope that next classes won't go through what we are going through, because I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Thank you for this heartfelt testimony. We're so sorry what you went through, but thank you for your courage to share your personal story with all of us in this very important forum that is addressing human rights violations around the world. I want to give the floor now to Eli Hassan Ben Massoud, a student at the College of Europe in Belgium and INSP in France, who's also a specialist in public affairs and engaged in Jewish-Muslim peace dialogue and initiatives.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I hoped to come to this very House of Human Rights to testify on the successes and improvement of human rights friendship between people from different backgrounds. However, it is with great sadness and deep sorrow that I came to testify before you on the shocking and dehumanizing outbreak of anti-Semitism, of which my experience is only one drop in an ocean filled of innumerable anti-Semitic acts, words, behaviors, and references. from which hundreds of thousands of students are suffering all over the world. I am Moroccan, of Jewish and Muslim descent, and I will tell you here a part of my story. In Bruges, Belgium, on March 23rd, 2024, after I spent hours at the library of the prestigious European institution, the College of Europe, where I study, I decided to go home to sleep after hours at the library. Around midnight, when I arrived on the second floor of my student residence, on my door and the surrounding walls, swastikas alongside the Star of David were painted. Surprised, shocked, and pained, I remained frozen for minutes, and I was trying to understand what's going on. It's no longer in the media, it's me. I understood that from now on, I was targeted and I was intimidated. This abominable act is deeply bothering and troubling and threatening to me. It's bothered me because I no longer can live a normal life. It's disturbing because I no longer know where to live and study in peace, in tranquility and dignity. It threatened me because I am targeted for who I am, for my characteristics. In the place where I live, I study and I sleep. But this was not the first time, nor the last time. It is in fact the culmination of an academic year that was particularly deeply and structurally anti-Semitic. And as if it wasn't troubling enough, the anti-Semite kept spreading their hatred, their violence, their radicalism, and I really dare to say their fascism. In reality, by attacking me, not only were they attacking my person and who I am, but they were attacking the peace we lived in. They were testing how far the institution could protect me. That was at the core of their movement, how far the law is protective. Their actions, their words, their behaviors, and their anti-Semitic references, because they come also with their references, know incredible dynamism. And I apologize to make some similarity with the COVID-19 to give some sense of what was happening. Like the COVID-19 virus, these anti-Semitic acts proliferated and spread. But unlike the COVID-19, and just like the cancer, they attacked la raison d'être of the university, to study in peace and against hatred. However, unlike the COVID, to fight anti-Semitism, our system had no care unit, no caregiver, no masks, no treatment, and no medicines. We were not ready for this unprecedented anti-Semitism. And yet, this anti-Semitic virus, we know it very well. For a very long time, we know it's in its diverse expressions and manifestations, of its multiple origins, and for the numerous reasons of their anti-Semite. What were the anti-Semitic attacks I have experienced? The attacks evolved with time. They were systemic, general, and their intensity increased with time. The evolution of this anti-Semitism depended indisputably on the lack of sufficient response, not only from the college where I was studying, but also from the whole society. First, the friends I made, who came from the Middle East, just like me, namely from Algeria, Tunisia, and Egypt, stopped talking to me on October 7th as I condemned Hamas anti-Semitic and anti-Semitism terrorism. Some even started to spit on the ground once they saw me. While the remarks were immediately condemned by other students because they were shocking and offensive, they became more hostile with time. Some started to persecute me during academic, sporting, social, political, and other activities at the College of Europe. What for? Because I wanted to celebrate our diversity and to condemn terrorism and anti-Semitism. Then, given the growing silence, and I quote some students, because they did not want to react. They did not want to react, and I quote, because they did not want to fuel the atmosphere of violence. So people did not want to actually to step up because they were afraid to fuel anti-Semitism, they said. These people began to say that the Jews must pay. They came to me, not this student, but the very specific group of students. They came and started to say to me, the Jews must pay and suffer the consequences of what's happening in the Middle East. They said this even publicly in the presence of certain teachers, including a former European diplomat, professor of the College of Europe, who really believes in Pacific values, who was outraged by their remarks, he told me. Finally, these people have become more disrespectful, violent, radicalized, and even intolerant to every aspect of what we could be. Human, religious, ideological, and academic backgrounds. For instance, at one festivity where we were supposed to organize an event in order to celebrate the pluralism and diversity of the MENA region, including the millennial Jewish presence and heritage that I proposed to them, I was simply excluded from the student society. I made the proposal to celebrate the Jewish presence and heritage because I precisely come from Morocco, and which we celebrate coexistence and the rich Muslim and Hebrew traditions enshrined in the Constitution of Morocco. I proposed this because I was making myself almost an ambassador of rich and plural and inclusive heritage that I come from. And that exactly, and if I may just name it, one of our kings in Morocco during the French Vichy collaborations with Nazi regime, they wanted to come to search for the Jews. He protected us. But immediately they started to become more insulting. These students become more insulting, more hateful, and persecuted me. This hatred turned into acts and became violent. On March 23rd, 2024, during a party in my student residence, while I was at the library, some people went up to the second floor, armed with paintings and their hatred. They painted swastikas, sign of equals, and Star of David, associating this with Judaism. This caused deep and psychological mental distress. And while I was hospitalized, the people continued to dehumanize me. A few weeks later, three contests were organized by a few students, including, and I have to mention, an Egyptian student. After I won one of these contests, because the majority of students voted in favor of me, he just decided to turn down that contest. And he said, the students are rotten to vote like that. So how did I experience this anti-Semitism? Horribly. I horribly experienced these anti-Semitic attacks. But one more question. How was anti-Semitism taken by the administration of my school? Because it's also very important. Anti-Semitism is also not only what we experience, but also the reaction we have to it. In all sincerity, and I really, really sorry to say this, and with deep disappointment and sadness, because I really love my school. And my heart is really tearing apart because I have to say this. The College of Europe has taken in charge the problem of anti-Semitism, not only insufficiently or very insufficiently, but even worse, too insufficiently. I would have said insufficiently if it only concerned few occasions incident with an appropriate response. I would have even said insufficiently if the phenomenon of anti-Semitism did not amplify over time. However, I say too insufficiently because anti-Semitism had become mobilizing, incisive, and above all, socially rewarding. The more anti-Semitic you act and you become, the more you're seen positively. And I also say too insufficiently because before I was attacked, I went to talk to the director and I told him I did not feel safe and that I needed the institution to do sufficiently to protect me. I was told, focus on my studies, and to paraphrase what he said, to shut up. He said, keep the profile low. Really, eyes into my eyes as I was looking at him, but how to focus when I am dehumanized. The College of Europe did organize an event on anti-Semitism, but the choice of the date, and that I think that's very important, the choice of the date, the choice of the timing, the choice of the place where the event will take place, and the fact that the event was not mandatory, and everywhere in Europe we could see this event, made, in fact, that less than 40 students, and I'm being, I think, more generous, less than 40 students, which is approximately 10% of the students were present. Some people said that they did not know how to fight anti-Semitism, and I'm quoting one of the leadership of the school. You don't know how to fight anti-Semitism. If you don't know, maybe you should invite people who know. And some clearly confused, some really clearly confused anti-Semitism with freedom of expression. These are two completely different things. Director of the College of Europe, Her Excellency Mogherini of Italy and of the European Union, was humanly welcoming when I was talking to her. She was very welcoming. She told me that she felt very sad and very sorry for what I was experiencing. She also helped me substantially to get out of this extremely anti-Semitic environment, but I did not want to leave my studies. I wanted to study in peace. Moreover, the College of Europe conducted an investigation after the attacks against me, but there was a communique. It was not conclusive. Wow. Moreover, I requested twice that an investigation to be opened. None have met a positive response. And if I have to admit this, one of them told me, no, it's too late. We're soon going to the summer. What's the relationship? The student got his diploma and left, the ones who attacked me. Though I thank the college for all what they have done. It is not to the victim, I believe it is not to the victim to disappear. It is to the ones who were abusive to be excluded. I wanted to live my academic life quietly and happily. But the choice that they made left me only one choice, to leave, which I ended up doing. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the anti-Semites that I had to face are like any other human being, and it is not a surprise. They are smiling, friendly, and kind. Some were even quite beautiful, I must admit. Great friends and good speakers, but they carried the hatred deep inside of them. They were really engineering the expressions and the manifestation of anti-Semitism. And this is really why I believe the IRA definition, the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism could be very, very helpful. Because we no longer go in what the law says, but we're trying to understand the phenomena of anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, some anti-Semitism have also learned this anti-Semitism in their cultural background. And though I come from Morocco, I know it is different expressions and manifestation of anti-Semitism. For example, the spitting on the streets. When someone does it only in one occasion, you might say, okay, but it becomes systematic, not only one. A group of almost 10 people, they do it systematically as I was walking. That is a problem. And I knew it because I was told by my own grandparents that this was happening before. But I was shocked because this was happening in Belgium, not even in Morocco. Because in Morocco, I kept my profile low, but this was happening in Belgium. I really came because believing that I could, be living in peace. Anti-Semitism, racism, and radicalism, they are virus that spreads, which begins with mild symptoms, if you remember the beginning of all this, often to test our antibodies, how our immune system is working. Then it spreads, it settles, and poisons all of us. I call on all of you, excellencies, to urgently, with deep sadness and with great hope, to take all serious, relevant, effective, and necessary measures against anti-Semitism, hatred, racism, and discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan, for sharing also this very troubling experience you had to go, including your hospitalization. And thank you for having the courage to share it with us. Without any further ado, we don't have a lot of time. I want to turn to the screen and listen and experience from North America. We have together with us Rose Goldstein, a recent Wesley College graduate, where she studied history and Italian studies, and she's also a fellow with the World Jewish Congress Lauder Fellowship. She now works full-time at the Campus Affairs Coordinator at Jews on Campus, a nonprofit organization that conducts campus anti-Semitism. Rose, we're happy you're with us. Thank you for being awake early, and we're happy to hear from you.
Hello, thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Rose Goldstein. I recently graduated from Wellesley College last December. Wellesley College is a small school outside of Boston. It's a campus where everyone knows each other in some way. So when you walk around on campus, at a certain point, I felt that everyone knew who I was because of my Judaism and because I felt strong enough to speak out against anti-Semitism that we were experiencing. So similar to how the other students have described, anti-Semitism also existed on campus before October 7th at Wellesley. I experienced it both personally and against the Jewish community as a whole. I lost friends from an organization that I joined very early on in my college career because of my support for the Jewish people's right to self-determination in our homeland in Israel. Later on, our school newspaper publicly announced that they thought a database, which had recently been published, of all of the quote-unquote Zionist organizations in the area, mostly synagogues and other Jewish organizations, was a useful tool. After October 7th, my social media was filled with students calling the attacks by Hamas resistance and liberation. It made me feel very, very afraid to go back to campus because I was on break at the time, knowing that so many of my peers celebrated these attacks and denied what was happening to Israelis. In November of 2023, the student residential staff of one of the dormitories on our campus sent an email to all of the residents in their dormitory stating that Zionism should have no space or no consideration on campus. I did not live in that dormitory, but many of my Jewish and proudly Zionist friends did, and we all felt very afraid, not knowing what every student's reaction was going to be and how we would be treated afterwards. From there, we were lucky that our college administration has been open to listening to our experiences and did as much as they could. But in doing so, they directed us to attend a panel taught by 3 professors at Wellesley on the conflict to better explain what was going on, and hopefully in a more academic way. And after attending that panel, it was me and the other Jewish students who attended felt even less secure and less safe on campus because of the way that some of these professors described the incidents and what had been happening in Israel since October 7th. One of the professors, for example, refused to say that what Hamas had done was anti-Semitic. The US designates Hamas as a terrorist organization. She would not call Hamas a terrorist organization. And this made me and the other Jewish students who were at that panel and the Jewish community as a whole feel as though more students would come after us because of our Judaism and our connection to Israel. After this, I was interviewed on CNN to talk about my experiences on campus and to talk about what had been happening on campus since October 7th. After this, many students publicly online posted pictures of me and with a screenshot of my face and my full name from the interview. I was called a disgrace. I was told that my voice should be, that I should be deplatformed, that people who knew me should stop talking to me, both on Instagram and then on SideChat, which is an app that allows students to post anonymously. So there were many students on this anonymous app posting without their names being shared, saying that what I had experienced wasn't valid, in other words, and that my voice shouldn't be the one being heard in this conversation. I was lucky at the time, this was last November, that our college administration was open to listening to my experiences and the experiences of other Jewish students, both in the classroom and both with other anti-Semitic experiences by their peers. However, it was difficult for them to do. They did not do as much as I believe they could have. There is, in short, no really any opportunity or any willingness for students to have any dialogue on campus. And this isn't just an experience that Jewish students at Wellesley have, but an experience of many other Jewish students across the United States. As I've heard from my friends on other campuses and from other peers, that students aren't willing to listen to the experiences of Jewish students. After these experiences personally on campus, I didn't feel safe. I didn't want to go anywhere alone on campus because I was afraid of what would happen. Early on in my college career, I was told to stay quiet about my experiences of anti-Semitism. I was told it would be better to not discuss what was happening because if I ignored it, it would just go away. But after October 7th, I knew that I needed to speak up, and it ultimately cost me my closest friends, my community, and my sense of belonging and pride that I felt being at Wellesley. I was made to feel that my experiences weren't valid because of my supposed privilege as a Jewish woman. And because of this experience and all the other experiences that so many Jewish students have faced on campuses, both in the United States and around the world, as we've heard, I urge all leaders to take anti-Semitism seriously and to do more in combating it. Thank you so much for your time.
Rose, thank you for being with us and sharing your experiences, these painful experiences, and adding also perspective from North America. Thank you for being with us, and thank you again for your courage. We're running a bit out of time. We have our last speaker, is Ron Stern, who is representing the European Union of Jewish Students as its vice president and board member. He's a student from Prague, Czechia, supporting young political Jewish activism and projects aimed at fostering young Jewish life in post-communist Europe. He's going to present a report about anti-Semitism at European campuses that you can find also some copies at the entrance and also, of course, online. Ron, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today with a profound sense of concern to address an escalating and distressing issue, the surge of anti-Semitic incidents on European university campuses. Our organization, the European Union of Jewish Students, has recently compiled a report highlighting a significant increase in anti-Semitic incidents. Between October 7th and December 2023, at least 2,093 anti-Semitic incidents were recorded across the United Kingdom. In France, we have witnessed a staggering 284% increase in anti-Semitic attacks in 2023 compared to the previous year. Similar distressing data can be found in other European countries. Synagogues, Jewish cemeteries, and Holocaust memorials have been vandalized in multiple cities. In addition to physical and verbal attacks, there has been a significant spread of false information and manipulated content online, further inflaming hatred and prejudice. I would like to draw your attention to 4 specific incidents that underscore the severity of this issue. During a graduation ceremony at the University of Amsterdam, a Palestinian student concluded his speech with the slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." This was followed by members of the audience booing and shouting derogatory remarks such as "dirty Jews" at the family of a Jewish student who stood up in protest. The family felt unsafe and left the ceremony. Alarmingly, the violent individuals were not removed, and the Jewish family was invited to celebrate separately. The university did not condemn this incident, failing to ensure the safety and inclusion of all of its students. In another incident, during a gathering at a university in Italy, a Jewish student wearing a Star of David necklace was approached by an individual who shouted "Free Palestine" and spilled a drink on him. This student was targeted solely because of his Jewish identity. He was neither Israeli, nor he did speak Hebrew, yet he became a victim of anti-Semitism simply due to a visible symbol of his faith. Furthermore, in December 2023, at Freie Universität in Berlin, Jewish students experienced exclusion and hostility. When attempting to enter a lecture hall without any visible political symbols, they were stopped by occupiers wearing warning vests who stated, "Zionists have no access." Recognized from previous public stances against Israel hatred, one student pushed past and took a seat. However, someone from the hall's microphone identified him as a Zionist, prompting a crowd to boo at him. Such targeted exclusion and public shaming are alarming indicators of intolerance taking root in our academic institutions. Another horrific case of physical assault is that of the co-president of the Belgian Union of Jewish Students. One day during a visit to his campus at the Free University of Brussels, he was identified as a Jew, attacked and strangled by a veiled radical protester participating in a pro-Palestinian encampment at the university. It was only by coincidence that a member of the university security staff noticed the attack and was able to intervene in time. In the meantime, the attacker hid in the crowd of protesters. The police refused to take any action. Please note the escalatory nature of these examples. These incidents are not isolated. They are part of a growing trend of anti-Semitism that is rearing its ugly head in our educational institutions, places that should be sanctuaries of learning, tolerance, and mutual respect. It is crucial that we, as an international community, take a firm stand against anti-Semitism. Universities must implement zero-tolerance policies towards any form of hate speech and discrimination. Educational institutions should promote awareness and understanding through comprehensive programs that highlight the history and consequences of anti-Semitism. Moreover, it is imperative that university administrators respond swiftly and decisively to any incident of hate. Silence and inaction are not options. We need to foster environments where every student, regardless of their background, feels safe and valued. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, also for giving us this overall picture. And as I say, the report that you quoted, it's available at the entrance and also online. Leaves us a few minutes from questions and observations from the floor before we can conclude the event. I see the United States. Ambassador Taylor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Leon, and many thanks to World Jewish Congress for putting on this important and sobering side event, and really want to echo the thanks to the students. I know how hard it is to share your personal experiences, especially when they're so raw, so thank you for your courage. More than 7 decades after the Holocaust, where most of my family was murdered and my mother miraculously survived, anti-Semitism is once again alarmingly on the rise around the world. As has so often been the case throughout history, anti-Semitism takes on new forms based on what is culturally acceptable and expedient. Although, of course, as we heard from the unnamed student, many of the tropes that we've seen throughout history remain consistent. Malign actors now blatantly use social media and messaging platforms to spread hatred against Jewish people and other prejudices with unprecedented speed and reach. The hatred and discrimination experienced by Jewish university students around the world since October 7th is particularly alarming. Everywhere I meet with Jewish communities, including the Lauder Fellows, and even on such seemingly benign topics as what English-speaking programming my synagogue should offer, the conversation always turns to how isolated and afraid Jews feel. I hear from parents and students stories like those we have heard today, and of students being told to take exams from home because their safety and access cannot be guaranteed on campus by the administration. Anti-Semitism and dehumanizing rhetoric that accompanies it can and does every time lead to real-world violence against religious or ethnic Jewish people. Hate in a society may begin with anti-Semitism, but it does not end with it. I know Leon's heard me talk about this a lot, but I think of it like there is a submarine of hate sitting under the water, and it sends up its periscope, much like what you talked about with the pandemic analogy. and tests the waters above with anti-Semitism. And you know what? If it flies, the whole submarine of hate just emerges out of the water. So we all should care. Hate breeds more hate, and those who hate are more interconnected than ever, especially given the use of new technologies. The United States categorically condemns all forms of violent extremism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, racism, homophobia, anti-Muslim hatred, and other forms of intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to engaging governments and civil society to underscore the importance of inclusion and understanding, as well as working with like-minded partners to promote what really is at the core of all of this, and that is humanity, empathy, and acceptance. So my question for the panelists is, what would you like to see the Human Rights Council do to address the virus of anti-Semitism? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Taylor, for these words and your leadership. Ambassador Elon Shahar of Israel.
Thank you very much, and I'm very vigilant of the time, but just to thank the World Jewish Congress for bringing this important and very concerning topic to us, and my deep appreciation for all the students here today and online, and to you just really, it's, what can I say? It's hard to listen, so I'm sure it was very hard. It's harder to go through it, so I'm very, very sorry for this. I know it requires a lot of courage to stand up against hate, but especially when you have institutions and fellow students and professors that are supposed to protect you, but are unfortunately part of the problem. But we have no choice but to stand against it. And certainly universities, from what we've seen in Europe and the States and in other places, have become hotbeds of Jew hatred, as you explicitly said before October 7th, but more so after October 7th. And anyway, the experience, what you've said, I mean, really is deeply concerning. I have to say, in this halls, we're sitting at the UN. We also, unfortunately, witness it. There are those who would argue, you know, academic freedom and freedom of speech as an excuse, but this does not provide a free pass for anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, even here you have, for example, the Special Rapporteur on Education that is given a free pass for haters. Doesn't meet with Jewish students, but of course supports all those who actually chant from the river to the sea and Gaz to the Jews. So it's very clear, I think, to everyone, I hope, that sitting here today and to many others, that, you know, when Jewish students are prevented from accessing public spaces in universities and don't feel safe, this is anti-Semitism. It's not free speech and should be treated as such. Another worrying trend, and you referred to it, Hassan, is the fact that in the UN, there is another trend of undermining the working definition of the IRA. And this is also very worrisome because we believe this is actually the definition that can help the UN member states, universities, institutions actually combat anti-Semitism, and we are here actually to make sure that to prevent it as much as we can, of course, with other colleagues, not only as Israel. I will just conclude by saying that anti-Semitism is a plague. Unfortunately, it's a very old one. It's a very old one, and it's raising its head today. More than before, perhaps the highest, you know, in percentage-wise since the World War II. And it's not only for one country. We will be there at the forefront always to protect the Jewish students. But it has to be understood that this must be a collective effort of all member states to do so. So thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have 1 minute left. I know Ambassador Manley has requested Ambassador Gikas of Greece. Regrettably, I cannot give you the floor. They are waiting for the next side event. I want to thank the speakers for the powerful testimonies. The students will be here for you. Today's topic is critical for the future of our society, so I hope all of us can work hard to deal with the challenges. In this respect, let me reiterate the value of the IRA non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism, a useful tool to identify and address contemporary forms of anti-Semitism by university staff, police, the judiciary, the media, and others. Before closing, I would like to thank my colleague Elisabetta Zeidman for organizing today's panel and all of you for attending. Thank you.